Welcome back to my channel. Today we will be cruising on Norwegian Dawn in the Baltic Sea in Europe. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Norwegian, the services, the cruise ship, the entertainment, the things that you can do on the ship, as well as we will go over the ports of call that we visited and things to be prepared for or plan for when you're going on the cruise ship like this, especially if you're doing all the planning yourself or would like to plan as much as possible. If you've never been on the cruise ship, you should know that these ships are like huge hotels with everything in it. If you've cruised with Norwegian before, you will know that they pay for loyalty and give you discounts and perks, especially to those who cruise with them all the time. Another fascinating fact about large cruise ships like this is that 1/3 of all the people on board is the staff. So you might have 3,000 people on board and almost over 1,000 people is the staff who provide services, clean your cabins, entertain you, cook for you, and do all kinds of things. Every day you will be able to see different wonderful shows, from Broadway musicals to dancing shows and other entertainment. You really never get bored on board. They have karaoke nights, you can see a movie, attend art exhibits and sales, go shopping, you can play in the casino or just listen to live bands and live music. The only biggest challenge on board of the ship is access to the internet or your phone service, especially if you're overseas. You can get better service when you're on land, on shore, but on board of the cruise ship, usually the internet is very expensive or very limited. So be prepared that you will not have access to it for a while, or you will have to pay a big premium in order to get unlimited access to the internet. You can always eat and get a drink any time of the day. And Norwegian has a freestyle cruising program where you do not have to make reservations to go to dinner. Most restaurants are free and included in your fare. You can either have a full sit-down dinner with full service at a number of restaurants on board, or you can enjoy the buffet upstairs in the garden cafe. The buffet options were very delicious and they were different every day. Onboard photography is awesome, although it runs a little bit expensive and the packages start from $150 for something very basic. I would definitely recommend to book your shore excursions way in advance, and sometimes it's a lot cheaper to book it directly via Viator or other travel sites rather than on the cruise ship. If you're making your shore excursions bookings yourself, make sure to purchase travel insurance for those excursions, because if the port is canceled, we could not get a refund from Viator because we didn't buy the travel insurance. If the weather is nice, you can always swim in the pool. There are jacuzzis, a designated area for kids, arcades. They also have a spa and a fitness center. Now I'm going to show you and tell you about some ports of call. Since this was a 9-day Baltic cruise with Norwegian, most cities or states near the Baltic Sea were very close to each other. Only a few ports of call were walking distance from the cruise ship. Most of the other ones you had to take a shuttle, a bus, like a hop-on, hop-off tourist bus that you can book directly without going through the cruise ship, or you can get a train or a taxi to your destination. So for this kind of transportation from the airport or to the port or to your destinations, make sure you plan those things in advance and do a little bit of research on your own to see how easy or how hard it is to get to certain sites or certain cities. For example, this port of call was Gdynia in Poland, and it was about 20 minutes ride by train to the city called Gdansk. This is the city in front of you. It's beautiful, it's historic, has a lot of tourists. So you can book an excursion, get a taxi, that will be pretty expensive, or take a train that is only costing you 1 or 2 euros each way per person. Before I go on talking about these historic European sites, I would like to ask you a favor. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel to see more videos and to support me. For first-time cruisers, what you have to consider when booking your first cruise and looking for one is Number 1, choose the destination that you want to visit. And number 2 is to choose the company, the cruise ship company that you would like to go with, because there are always many choices. Do your research, check the ratings, check the destinations. I was lucky to book a couple of cruises before myself with different companies, and my preference is Norwegian because I compared it to other ones, and that was the best one for me. Norwegian has great service, entertainment, food, and so many different destinations you can go to. Plus, I get to earn points, so it gives me additional discounts and perks for each new cruise I book. On average, a week of cruising, that is about 6 to 9 days, will cost 2 people about $5,000. Most of the time, this will not include airfare, but it will include 20% service fees, taxes, port charges, and any other fees will be also included in that cost. Most of the times, you can also ask your cruise line to include the airfare when they have special deals, or help you with finding the hotel in your destination. If you decide to arrive a day or two early, or stay for a couple of days after the cruise. This Polish city Gdansk is located on the Baltic coast of northern Poland. The city has a complex history, having had periods of Polish, German, and self-rule. In front of you is the largest medieval port crane in Europe, since Gdansk was the largest seaport in 15th through 17th century. The oldest evidence found for the existence of a settlement on the lands of what is now Gdansk comes from the Bronze Age, which is estimated to be from 2500 to 1700 BC. The settlement that is now known as Gdansk began in the 9th century, being mostly an agriculture and fishing-dependent village. And in the beginning of the 10th century, it began becoming an important center for trade. This town is among the most visited cities in Poland, that is being visited by 3 to 4 million tourists every year. Since we visited Gdansk on our own and we took a train, we got lost a little bit on the way back. One of the best things about Europe is not only it's easy to travel because everything is so close, but also many people speak English. The city of Klaipeda is located on the Baltic Sea coast of Lithuania, and it has the only major seaport. A settlement of Baltic tribes in the territory of the present-day city is said to have existed in the region as early as the 7th century. For centuries, 70% of people were Germans before the Second World War. But when the city was captured in 1945 by the Soviet armies, Klaipeda was swiftly repopulated by Russians and Lithuanians. Unfortunately, some of its iconic German-style buildings that survived the war were torn down soon after the Soviets arrived. Interestingly, one of the area's most iconic buildings is post-1940, and even more uniquely, it is a church, Our Lady of Peace. This brown building with a slim tower has been constructed in 1960 using people's donations and volunteer work. During the Soviet times, the building was used as a concert hall, and only in the year 1988, the building was returned to its intended use as a church. So this way, under the Russian rule, the German history was wiped out almost entirely in Klaipeda. Old Town and New Town, there are still many pre-war buildings, Art Nouveau and wooden frame, even if they're frequently standing side by side with newer ones. Most of Klaipeda's residents live outside of these picturesque areas, however, in the massive Soviet boroughs that adjoin the southern limits of Klaipeda's downtown. Most shopping malls and some key entertainment venues are also located there. This medieval town Visby in Sweden dates back to the 12th century. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Visby lies on the northwest coast of the island of Gotland in the Baltic Sea. Because of its remarkably well-preserved medieval buildings, Visby, the city of roses and ruins, was designated a protected monument in 1810 and a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1995. A Stone Age settlement and port existed circa 2000 BCE near the future town site. In the Bronze Age, the island's inhabitants were engaged in trade with other Baltic groups. Gotland later gained importance because of its location, and German merchant colonists subsequently established the town of Visby. The Cathedral of St. Mary was built from 1190 to 1225 and later expanded and remodeled. Foreign traders settled on the island as early as the 9th century CE. Visby was also called Queen of the Sea. It developed its own maritime code and coined its own money. The Old Town section of Visby still displays its medieval heritage. This historic site is one of the best preserved medieval cities in Scandinavia. Visby is the sole county in Sweden accessible from the mainland only by boat and air. In 1361, during the conquest of Gotland by the Danish king Valdemar IV, a peasant army attempted to hold the invaders near Visby. It is unclear whether citizens of the town aided the ill-equipped defenders, but the town yielded soon, after the peasants, including women and children, were brutally slaughtered. The discovery of their mass graves in the early 20th century was a major archaeological find. A heavy tribute was exacted by Valdemar IV, but Visby continued to prosper from regional trade. Its old rivalry with Lubeck finally escalated into warfare, turning into the burning of a portion of the town by Lubeck fleet in 1525. Several gates and 27 defensive towers are still intact. The Old Town section of Visby still displays its medieval heritage. It is surrounded by a 13th century wall, 2.2 miles or 3.6 kilometers long, that reaches heights of more than 30 feet or 9 meters. Jean Sibelius was Finland's greatest composer. His famous classic music was often credited with having helped Finland develop a national identity during its struggle for independence from Russia. Since 2011, Finland has celebrated a Flag Day on 8th of December, the composer's birthday, also known as the Day of Finnish Music. Helsinki is not only the capital but also the largest city in Finland. It is located in the southern part of the country on the shore of the Gulf of Finland by the Baltic Sea. Founded in 1550 by King Gustav I of Sweden, the town struggled in its infancy. The fledgling settlement was plagued by poverty, wars, and diseases. For a long time it remained as a small, low-key coastal town, overshadowed by the more thriving trade centers in the Baltic region. Construction of the Sveaborg sea fortress helped to improve its status, but it was not until Russia defeated Sweden in the Finnish War and annexed Finland as the autonomous Grand Duchy of Finland in 1809 that Helsinki began to truly emerge. To help reduce the Swedish influence, Tsar Alexander I of Russia had the capital moved from Turku to Helsingfors. The only university in the country at the time was also relocated to Helsinki in 1827, eventually becoming the University of Helsinki. This move consolidated the city's new role and helped set it on path of continuous growth. This transformation is highly apparent in the downtown core area, which was rebuilt in the style to resemble St. Petersburg, mostly to a plan by the German-born architect Engel. Moreover, the technological advancements such as railroads and industrialization were key factors behind the city's growth. It would be a long walk from the port to the downtown area of Helsinki, so I would strongly recommend for you to either get on the bus, the hop-on hop-off buses stop is right by the cruise ship, or make arrangements for an excursion. If you ever go to Finland, you will have to experience their sauna and their sauna culture. It is a big deal there, and you can easily find sauna anywhere. I'll bet you'll find it in the hostel, hotel, apartment, or wherever you're gonna go, will have one. All saunas have mixed gender, and on the weekends, the whole family will be going to sauna, from the old to the young. And traditionally, people will not wear any clothes in saunas. As an ancient settlement, Riga emerged as a trading post in the late 12th century. Seagoing ships found a natural harbor and a major trade route to points east and south from the Viking Age onward. Riga occupies both banks of western Dvina River, 9 miles or 15 kilometers above its mouth on the Gulf of Riga. During the Viking Age in 1199, 23 ships of crusaders established the military order of the Brothers of the Sword. The city of Riga that was founded in 1200s was the base for conquering the lands to the northeast, to the west, and to the south. And by 1282, it became the dominant center of trade on the Baltic Sea's eastern shore. Riga was briefly independent, but then it was passed to Poland in 1581. It was captured by Sweden in 1621 and then taken in 1709 by Peter the Great. In the late 18th century, the city was a haven of enlightenment. The population grew in 1800s with the expansion of railroads. The city's manufacturing sector expanded to include foundries, machine works, shipbuilding yards, and factories that produced railroad cars, electric appliances, and more. On the eve of World War I, Riga was the Russian Empire's third largest city, with a population of 517,000. From 1915 to 1917, however, one of the war's front lines lay along the river, resulting in heavy damage on both shores. Hundreds of thousands were relocated into Russia, and 400 factories were evacuated, with all their machinery, and never returned. In 1918, Latvia's independence was declared again, and Riga city became the new republic's capital. Again in 1940s, Latvia was occupied by the Soviets, and Riga lost thousands of people in 1940 through 41 to Soviet deportations and executions. Then Nazi Germany occupied the city during the World War II, making it the administrative capital of Ostland, a territory encompassing Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Belarus. More than 25,000 of the city Jews were imprisoned in Riga ghetto, shot in Rambula forest, and buried in mass graves in 1941. The Soviets returned in October of 1944, and for the next 40 years, Riga was the Soviet Baltic Military District's command post. The population vacuum created by war deaths, emigration, and deportations was filled by Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians who settled the Baltic region as part of the Soviet internal immigration policy that continued through 1980s. There is something about small countries being adamant about their achievements. In 1515, Riga recorded the first decorated Christmas tree. Despite what many touristy restaurants claim, there is no Latvian gastronomy, but Russian and German cuisines made from local and seasonal food. With 55% of the country covered in forest, many people of Riga love their mushrooms from the forest in the fall and forest berries in the spring. Seafood is also a big part of the Latvian diet. The local delicacy of smoked fish is a must-try. The historic center of Riga was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1997. Many medieval buildings survive, among them the 13th century Riga Cathedral, the 14th century Riga Castle, and the merchants' homes and warehouses. The building of the Brotherhood of Blackheads is one of the most iconic buildings of Old Riga. Riga began to develop as a center of Viking trade center during the early Middle Ages. Riga's inhabitants occupied themselves mainly with fishing and trading, later developing crafts in bone, wood, amber, and iron. During the Soviet period, movies were thriving. However, these movies had to be shot within the Soviet Union, even if the stories took place somewhere else. With its many foreign influences, Riga's architecture turned the city into the hotspot of the empire to shoot films. If every wave of conquest left its mark on the Latvian capital, the Russian Tsar, Peter the Great, had an even deeper impact in the early 1700s. He studied the Western world to modernize his empire and appointed Westerners to rule Riga as mayors, turning it into an architectural jewel. One of the most successful Soviet TV shows was the 1979 Sherlock Holmes, shot in the heart of Riga. Since 2014, it's been illegal to display publicly the Nazi swastika cross and the Soviet hammer and sickle in Latvia, as well as associated symbols. After the brief occupation by Nazi Germany and double occupation by the Soviet Union, the recent history is still quite present in the now independent Baltic state. Actually, Soviet symbols used to be displayed until quite recently. With so many conquests, a law was passed making it mandatory to build in wood in the suburbs, while the old town was made of stones. This way, the wooden suburbs could be torched down, preventing attacking armies from taking shelter. A perfect example of this law is the Lutheran Church of Jesus, southeast of the old town. It looks like a regular stone church, but it is all made of wood. Here is another beautiful old town of Tallinn. It's one of the best preserved medieval cities in Europe and is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Just like many other cities located on the Baltic Sea, around 1050 AD, a fortress was built in what is now central Tallinn. As an important port on a major trade route between Novgorod and Western Europe, it became a target for the expansion in the beginning of the 13th century, when Christianity was forcibly imposed on the local population. Danish rule of Tallinn and northern Estonia started in 1219. Earliest evidence of human population in the area dates back nearly 5,000 years. The medieval population of what is now Tallinn and northern Estonia was one of the last pagan civilizations in Europe to adopt Christianity. The name Tallinn is Estonian. It's been widely considered a historical derivation, meaning Danish castle, because the Danish invaders built the castle in place of the Estonian stronghold after the battle in year 1219. This year, in 2023, Tallinn received European Green Capital Award. The city has pledged to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030, and it takes pride in its high air quality. The town hall pharmacy has been in business for over 500 years. It was first mentioned in Tallinn's official records in 1422. Since that time and possibly before, the pharmacy has continued to operate. It's now known as Europe's longest operating pharmacy. St. Olaf's Church is described in records as the tallest building in the world, from approximately 1549 to 1625. This fact is a bit hard to prove, but even without the title, the church is an impressive landmark of Tallinn's old town. and has a long history. Built in the 12th century, the holy building is dedicated to Saint Olaf, also known as King Olaf II of Norway. Today, it is an active Baptist church with a devout following. Besides all this medieval history of Estonia, would you like to know something different? Estonia has the highest number of meteorite craters per square kilometer in the world. The Kali crater is what remains of the last giant meteorite to hit an area populated by humans. It fell to Earth with the power of a nuclear bomb over 4,000 years ago. It's so hard to cover the whole trip in one episode. I'm going to tell you more about the cruise and other ports of call in my next video next week. Patriarch Palace, or Catherine's Valley, was commissioned by Peter the Great of Russia for his second wife Catherine I. Surrounded by wooded parkland with a beautiful lake, formal gardens, and several museums, the complex sits on the edge of Gdansk district of Tallinn. The palace, designed by famed Italian architect Niccolo Michetti, is an exquisite example of Petrine Baroque architecture, which flourished in St. Petersburg in the 17th and 18th century. Tallinn has the highest number of startup companies per person among all capitals and larger cities in Europe,